All right, good afternoon, everybody. So it's awesome to always see such a big audience at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, especially on a Tuesday. I'm sure many of you were out late last night, myself included. So if I don't fall asleep with you today, you'll actually learn something about security and compliance in SharePoint and OneDrive for Business. We've got an action-packed session for you today. We're going to focus much of our time on demonstrations of some of the new work that we're doing to help you secure and manage information with SharePoint and OneDrive. I'm Bill Baer. I'm a product manager in our SharePoint product group. It happens when we get too close together. So I'm Bill Baer. I'm a product manager in our SharePoint product group. I focus on a number of different things on a day-to-day basis, our mixed reality experiences with SharePoint spaces, security compliance administration, server hybrid migration, deprecations. Yes, you can blame me for many of those. But today is the Security and Compliance Day. So the way that we're going to run through this session this afternoon is we're going to talk first about some of the trends that are shaping the security landscape. And this is kind of one of the most fundamental things to understand as you think about security and compliance and the way that it impacts you on your day-to-day lives in today's ever-changing workforce. We'll shift gears from there, and we're going to talk about how we can help address those trends that we see in the modern workplace today. Some of the tooling that we're developing, some of the capabilities and solutions that we have available to you both now, and we're going to demonstrate some of those that we're going to have available to you in the future as well. From there, we're going to go ahead and move on to roadmap, give you an idea of what's coming next based on some of what you've seen throughout the course of this session today, and then we'll open up time for questions and answers, and we have a ton of swag for people that have some unique questions for us or that stump us with their security and compliance challenges. So just to keep us running real quick, what's happening in the workforce today? Well, one, there's been a fundamental shift in the way that people are working and the way that people expect to work. The way that people expect to work today, it's about being social, it's about being mobile, and it's about getting things done. Those are generally the three things that interest people in the workforce today. And what we're seeing is we're seeing consumer experiences bleed over into the enterprise. There's a natural expectation that you should be able to work remotely. There's a natural expectation that your data should follow you across devices and networks. There's a natural expectation that you should be able to collaborate outside of the barriers of your organization. And in the event that you don't provide those capabilities, those users will find a way to execute those needs inside of the organization. Great examples of which is many of you may raise your hand right now and say, we don't allow external sharing in our organization. By stating that, that means you've put controls in place that don't allow external sharing, and that means you've put a policy in place that says don't share externally. But that doesn't mean that your users aren't sharing externally. When you start to take away capabilities, your users will find other ways to facilitate the need. So they'll find consumer products or freemium products. They'll authenticate using either their Facebook identity or their Twitter identity. They'll sign up for their free 5 gigabytes, and they'll start sharing externally. The thing that happens with users is they're looking to be able to collaborate. They're looking for data mobility. They're looking for that opportunity to work remotely. In fact, if you look at some of the recent statistics, about 43% of workers worldwide will be mobile by 2023. We've seen over 140% increase in remote work since 2005. So the more that the cloud and connectivity, being ubiquitous as it is today, becomes part of our natural lives, the more people are going to want to work against that and become more mobile and become more remote. And most employees today are using mobile devices for work inside of their organization today, 78% of which. How many people today are using a mobile device that's a personally owned device that's accessing corporate resources or data? So the majority of you have access to corporate resources and data on your mobile devices. One of the things that I like to think about is if you think about what that means from a security perspective in today's landscape. Many of you probably that raised your hand traveled to Ignite today, I'm sure, from somewhere else, either in the country or outside of the continental United States. So if you think about what that means on those devices that you own that are accessing corporate data, at your home you were probably connected to your own wireless network on that device. And then you left your home to begin your travels to Ignite. So as soon as you left the range of your wireless network, you either connected to a network that's provided by a company that does business in the country or locale or region that you may be in, or otherwise you were connected to your carrier network. You arrived at your airport To travel to Ignite, in all likelihood, you took advantage of their wireless network or their wireless networking offer at that airport. When you boarded your aircraft, in many cases they offer wireless networking today. You may have opted to connect to that wireless network as well. Upon arrival at your destination, you either connected to your carrier network or the wireless network available at your destination airport. Your carrier network as you were being transported from the airport to the hotel. You then connected to the hotel's wireless network from there, and then you connected to the wireless network here at Ignite. So if you think about what that means, in the course of just a few hours, there's only been one common, and that's the data that you're accessing. That data that you're accessing has occurred on 7 different networks throughout the course of those few hours that you may have been traveling, or many hours that you've been traveling, depending on how far away you came from. So 7 different networks that are untrusted networks for all intents and purposes. You don't know what's behind those networks, who owns those networks, and who controls those networks, but your corporate data was available across 7 different networks. So those are some of the challenges that you're facing in the security landscape today. And those are the trends that we've come to expect. Connectivity has become ubiquitous, and we can't live without it. And your users won't live without it. So we have to figure out a way to address it. Some of the other trends that we're seeing is more and more organizations or individuals inside of organizations are working in a collaborative work environment. They're no longer working in silos. They're no longer working discretely on projects. They're collaborating both within and outside of the organization. Many of those may be managers, and many of those are using personal accounts for their work purposes as well. So you've got this complex security landscape that exists today, and compounding that, we're seeing 50% year-over-year growth in data. So the growth of data is just exponential. It's expected to be 44 zettabytes by 2020. And then when you think about all that data that you have to rationalize and try to manage, and you think about the fact that by 2021, over $6 trillion is going to be lost to cybercrime, how do you manage all of those things, particularly in the age of GDPR, in the age where more and more states here in the contiguous US are enacting their own privacy laws, examples of which could be AB 875 in California. So we're seeing more and more data privacy requirements, we're seeing more and more data growth, and we're seeing more and more mobility in people traversing both networks and devices. So it creates a number of different challenges to be able to keep up to date on the trends that we're seeing in the landscape today. And then the reality is that we're also still living in a world of classic IT or traditional IT, and there's going to be tension there. So if you think about it, IT departments, and many of you may be IT. How many of you would classify yourselves as IT in the room today? So the majority of you would classify yourselves as IT, and IT departments have really built themselves around this kind of concept of this traditional PC lifecycle. Managing images, kind of controlling updates, locking down behavior, protecting users. But the reality is IT is evolving as well, and IT needs to evolve to adapt to the trends that your users have come to expect in both their work, and the reason it's coming into their work is because it's transitioning or blending in from their consumer life cycle. So if you think about it, in the past you may have been managing a single device, a corporate-owned device, easy to manage, you know what it is, you control the images and you deploy them. That's traditional IT. Today is multiple devices. The personal devices that many of you have brought with you, as well as perhaps the managed devices and the kiosk devices that you'll find out in the lobbies. Business-owned devices are starting to become a thing of the past. You're seeing a transition from business-owned devices to user-owned devices, or a combination thereof. You're also seeing that we're moving away from corporate and legacy applications to more cloud-managed and software-as-a-service applications. The other thing that's with traditional IT, it was all about manual processes. When you think about the process of discovery, locating information, and rationalizing data that's being created, curated, managed, and shared within your organization, that was a manual process. The shift is towards intelligence. You heard it through Satya's keynote, and you've probably heard it through sessions throughout the course of the week thus far. More and more investment in artificial intelligence, more and more investment in machine learning to help you better manage and secure that data. Moving from a world that's reactive, from a world of recovery, to a world of discovery, a world that's proactive. And then we're getting away from that high-touch scenario to those self-service scenarios. So as IT evolves with the users, that's where you'll find the most success. But it also introduces complexity when you think about the devices, the networks, the users, all of these things that you have to manage, because we've moved beyond the firewall being a device that you rack in your data center to the firewall being the user themselves. So if you think about it, about $1.37 million is on average, that's an organization that an organization, IT, such as yourselves, will spend annually. It's time wasted on erroneous malware alerts. We're going to do some great demonstrations today of how we can address that intelligently through our service today. There's also going to be a huge cybersecurity workforce shortage. So the cybersecurity market is a huge opportunity, but there's also going to be a shortage of individuals that have the skill set necessary in order to protect corporate data. And then the other thing that we've seen from a complexity perspective, when I say complexity is the enemy of security, most organizations, and probably many of you in the room today, you have over 70 security products, probably from 35 different vendors all over the place, from antivirus to conditional access, from mobile device management, mobile application management. We probably have a number of different vendors and a number of different products. So for organizations that are over 1,000 employees, they have a number of different security products from a number of different vendors that they need to manage on a day-to-day basis. And this is where we like to differentiate ourselves as one vendor that can provide you all of the tools necessary to address conditional access, to address GDPR, to address AB 875, to address mobile device management, mobile access management, to address retention, to address sensitivity. So one unique vendor that can do all of that. At the heart of everything that you have, the most important asset that probably exists in your organization outside of the individuals in your organization is the information itself. Data is your most important asset, and that is right at the center of everything that needs to be secured and everything that occurs around it. So security occurs around the data. So what you're doing is building a boundary around that data, because let's face it, data loss is non-negotiable. It's not something that you can buy back. From day one, your data is protected without having to turn one knob or flip one switch inside of Office 365 through our investments in our platform security. From our data center security practices all the way down to our red team, blue team practices, penetration, testing, all of the various things that we do to secure the service, from data at rest encryption and motion encryption, all of those things are taken care of you from day one. So from the day that file lands in SharePoint and OneDrive, it's protected via platform security. And then what we have available on the outside of that are our compliance controls. So you have platform security from day one to protect your data. Our compliance controls can then make sure that you can properly adhere to corporate and regulatory compliance needs as necessary for your organization. And then on the outside of that are our security controls. So we've got a multi-layered approach to keeping you secure. That's our unique approach to your security and compliance challenges in SharePoint and OneDrive for Business and Office 365. So now what we're going to do over the course of the rest of the session is we're going to talk about each of these unique things, starting first with platform security. So I'll invite Navjot up to talk a little bit about our platform security investments.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. So I'm going to start by first asking a question. So how many of you run an on-premises service? Okay, and how many of you would say it's easy to keep that service running, make sure it has the latest bits, and make sure it's absolutely secure? Yes, I know, not a single hand went up. It is really hard. Now, we run one of the world's largest service that is growing at an exponential rate, and we provide you top of the class, best security, enterprise-grade security you can get, a highly reliable service with the money-backed SLA. So how do we do it? So my name is Navjot Virk. I'm a group program manager on SharePoint and OneDrive team, and my team is responsible for running the SharePoint and OneDrive service and all the security and admin controls on that. So let's talk about how do we do it. Clicker. Okay, only one of us should click it. Okay, so let's start with the footprint. So we have over 100, Yes, we have over 100 highly secure data centers in over 40 locations in about 14 to 15 countries. This large footprint allows us to give you a highly reliable and available system. We store your data, we make multiple copies of your data, and store it in different data centers in the same region. So in case there is ever an outage, or there is ever a natural disaster, we can seamlessly fail you over to another copy of the data or another data center. This large footprint also allows us to give you the choice to choose where your data is stored to meet your data residency needs. We also have one of the 3 largest fiber networks in the world. That means, but that comes with over 50 edge nodes. So that means you are never too far from a high bandwidth, high speed network, and that allows us to give you great performance from anywhere in the world. Every time we make any change to the service, any piece of code that is written that gets deployed to the service goes through multiple rings of validation. It goes through extensive testing at Microsoft. It goes through lots of rings before we start rolling it to any of the customers. And even when we start rolling it to the customers, it's a very gradual rollout. And the idea is that if there's anything broken, any functionality loss, anything wrong that has happened, we want to detect it, and we're constantly monitoring it. If we discover an issue, we immediately roll it back. That means that every time any code gets to you, it's well tested, and the global scale at which we run it and the number of customers that we have and their varied scenarios means that every line of code has been executed billions of times by the time you're getting it. Every piece of data stored in our service is encrypted with best security that's available. It's encrypted at rest. It's encrypted during transit. Nobody has standing access to your data. And obviously, all the software that we run and the way we run the service, we follow the best security principles. There's security in depth, penetration testing. And to top it all, we have a red team, which is essentially a team of highly specialized security experts that is constantly attacking our service, trying to hack it, to try and see if we have a vulnerability. And if there is anything that they find, we can go and fix it before anybody else finds it. So we have a highly secure system, but like I mentioned, this is growing exponentially. So how do we keep hundreds of thousands of machines on which we run the service safe and secure? In simple words, we automate everything. So first, we have automated system that ensures that every machine in the data center on which the service is running is compliant. That means it has the right version of the OS, it has the right patches, it has the right security setting. And we're checking each machine constantly. If a machine is not compliant, we instantly take it out of rotation. We will re-image the machine, make sure it's compliant again, and we bring it back into rotation. And all of this is completely automated. We are also looking at over 20 terabytes of logs every single day to monitor every single activity that is happening on our machines to try and see what are the patterns of usage that are going on, and we try to detect if anything anomalous is happening. And our algorithms are pretty smart. They don't just look at the patterns on a single machine. They actually look at what's happening across machines. They look at, sometimes, if something is happening on a single machine, it may seem completely normal. But if you notice the same thing happening on a bunch of machines or a cluster of machines, that might be suspicious. So we're automatically detecting those kind of things and looking for intrusion. Now, we store our data, the blobs, and the metadata in Azure, but we don't rely on Azure security. We are monitoring every single access that happens to our Azure resources. So we are looking at over 50 billion events every single day to make sure that our resources are accessed properly, only by our service, by the right processes, in the right way, so that nobody is finding another way to get to the data that we have stored in Azure. And we have what we call an adaptive firewall, which means that our network is opened exactly to only the machines in our service. Our network isn't open any more or any less. Now, our service is growing exponentially, so we're constantly adding lots of machines. We're also taking machines out of rotation for maintenance, or frankly, as they deprecate. And our firewall automatically adapts to this. Every time a machine is taken out of rotation, that IP address is removed from our firewall, and every time a machine is added, that IP address is automatically added. So it's exactly right, never more, never less. And we are able to achieve all of this because we're doing this all in an automated manner. That allows us to scale the service, but it also means that there is less chances of any human errors, so we can give you a more reliable service that has higher levels of availability. But don't take our word for it. I always say trust, but verify. We're absolutely transparent, and you can go find all the information to figure out where your data is stored, how we secure it, who has access to it, under what circumstances. We have independent audits, and we publish the reports of those independent audits and certifications that you can go and find out, so you can verify that Microsoft is actually doing what we claim we're doing. And on top of that, we offer you extra controls. Using customer lockbox and customer keys, you get an extra level of control on top of all of this. Using customer lockbox, you can make sure that if anybody needs to access your data, they first need to get prior permission from you, and the access is time-bound. And customer keys give you the ability to provide your own keys that you control to encrypt your data that is stored in our service. If you revoke our access to those keys, nobody at Microsoft, including the SharePoint and OneDrive service, can access or decrypt your data. We believe it is your data. We are just the custodians. You should have full control and visibility on your data at all times. So that's just how we run the platform from day one: secure, reliable, and available. But now let's talk about the security controls we give you on top of that, so you can configure the security to meet the needs of your organization. So first, some stats, just like Bill was talking, just to set some context. 2 billion. 2 billion is the projected number for mobile workers by year 2020. That means that more and more of your users will be accessing your data on devices and networks that you do not manage and probably don't trust. At the same time, malware and ransomware is getting smarter and harder to protect against. Now, in this environment, keeping your sensitive information safe and secure is pretty challenging. So let's talk about how SharePoint and OneDrive help you address this challenge. So first, we're making it easy for you to apply the right level of security to your sensitive information. SharePoint and OneDrive already have conditional access policies that allow you to control the level of access your users can have from an unmanaged, potentially insecure device or insecure, potentially non-corporate network. You can either allow your users full access from these unmanaged devices. You can give them limited access, in which case they only get browser access. They cannot download, print, or sync on these devices because you don't trust the device. We don't want the data to accidentally leak to the device. Or you can block all access. But now, you can automatically apply these policies based on the sensitivity of the content. We just announced this yesterday, the Microsoft Information Protection labels. You can use these labels to apply consistent, automatic security and access policies based on sensitivity of the data. So let me invite Sanjay and Mustafi, who's another program manager on SharePoint and OneDrive team, to help me show you how this works. We're going to run through a bunch of demos, and I think we'll take the questions in the end. Do write your questions down. We have swag for the best questions you can stump us with, or even if you don't stump us, good questions. We are going to echo.
We'll start with her.
Yes, if you can stand a little far, because I think we're all echoing a little bit. Can you guys hear us right? Okay, great. I can hear an echo.
Told you, we're not allowed to be close together.
I know. And if we can get the display to shift, that would be awesome. 4. Okay. So, as you can see, here I am in the new Microsoft 365 Security and Compliance Center, and I have created 3 different sensitivity labels for my organization. One is called General, Confidential, and Top Secret. And when I create the label, I can associate it with lots of different security and access policies. You can see different kinds of policies that you can add to it. In this particular case, I have actually added only 2 policies to this label. First is that I want to make sure that any document that is labeled top secret has content marking on it. The document should automatically have a watermark, a header, and a footer. And I want to make sure that if a group is marked top secret, the group should be private. And if a site is marked top secret, I'm going to block all access to that site from an unmanaged device. And once I publish these labels, both admins and end users can use these labels in various experiences, and we'll show you some of those. So here I am logged in as the admin, and I'm managing some sites. So first thing is when you go to the sites management page, you can actually see the sensitivity labels. So here I have the sales compete collateral site, and you can notice that it's currently marked general. General, I actually forgot to show you the general label. So the general label, unlike the top secret label, actually allows full access from both managed and unmanaged devices. So I'm just going to quickly show you. And so if you notice, this is the general label, and it says allow full access. So now the site that I was showing you currently has the general label, which means it's accessible both from managed and unmanaged devices. So I'm going to have Sanjay show you the access to this site. And then I'm going to change the label, and then we can see how it shifts.
Okay, so thanks, Navjot. I am on my unmanaged device, and I'll go to a site which is marked as general.
We're not trying to scare you.
Okay, so this is my sales compete collateral site. This is an important site. I have my all compete materials marked as general. I have access to this site from my unmanaged device.
Correct. So now, as an admin, I go in, and all I have to do is, yes, 4, please. We're going to keep doing this every so often to just like spoil everybody's hearing.
Good to know it's not just me.
It's not just you. Okay, so here I am at the same site, the sales compete collateral site, and I'm actually going to change its label, which is pretty simple. I can do that from the new admin center. So all I'm going to do is mark it top secret. I hit save. And that's it. Now the label is going to get updated. And all I had to do was update the label, and whatever policies come with the new label will get enforced now. So let's see what Sanjay's experience is like on the unmanaged device now that the label changed.
Okay, exact same, my home page. Okay, clicking on sales compete collateral. No permission. That's it. No signing out, no nothing. Okay, I lost permission on that site.
So yes,
okay,
you can clap. Exactly.
All right.
So, oh my God, is there somebody from AV here to make sure it doesn't happen every time I bend down? Okay, great. I will be very tentative with this every single time, and we're going to do this many times today. Okay, so you notice as an admin, all I had to do was just change the label, and then the policies just flowed with it. So I don't have to think about this over and over again. All I have to think about is which sites should be general, which sites should be top secret, and I'm done. Now, admin is not the only one who can use these labels. The end user can also use these labels. So Sanjay is going to show you some experiences where the same labels show up for the end user too, and the same policies get enforced.
8. Cool. So I've logged in as Emily today, and I'm going to create a team site. And while I'm creating the team site, let's name it Ignite 18. I see the exact same set of labels that my admin has provided to me. So I see general, confidential, and classified. So if I select top secret, I see my privacy settings change to private. If I go back to general, the privacy setting changes to public. You see, I am not being able to change my privacy settings because these are governed by my labels. So the labels are always there. Now, what I'm going to show you is I can quickly go to my document, okay, and show the same label experience exists on Office apps as well. So I see the exact same set of labels assigned to me, Emily, general, confidential, and top secret. Let me choose top secret. It immediately puts a header, a watermark, and the footer. So I can see the experience in my Office clients. Now, finally, if I go to my site, I have already uploaded some documents which are labeled. So you see the new column, which is the sensitivity column. You can filter and sort on that column and find out what are the documents which are top secret or general and things like that. And when you open the document in your browser, you see, again, a seamless experience. You see the label here. You see the effect of the label. It has the header. It has the watermark. It has the footer. And the label is across browser and clients.
These labels can be applied to files, they can be applied to teams, they can be applied to sites, they can be applied to groups and emails, and they flow consistently across M365. So you as an admin just have to go create this once, and then the experience is automatically working. These labels work everywhere in M365. You don't have to worry about security again. So now switching back to our slides. So the next thing we want to talk about is, so we've basically just talked about how to protect your sensitive information from an unmanaged device and make sure that it doesn't accidentally leak to a device that is not managed by you, because that device could potentially be compromised, and you don't want your information to flow to one of those devices. But frankly, unmanaged devices are not the only ones that can get compromised. A managed device can also get compromised. So now let's talk about malware. So imagine that you have a managed device that got compromised because the user did something, and now there's malware on it. So that's one scenario. The second scenario is that maybe you are working on a team site that's shared with people, or you have a OneDrive folder you've shared with somebody, and somebody uploads a file that is actually malware, but now it's in your OneDrive or in your SharePoint site. So let's talk about how we protect you in those scenarios. So once again, I'm going to have Sanjay help me through this. So the first scenario we're going to take you through is where a compliant device has become, a managed device has been infected with malware, and what happens in that scenario.
Can I get your network, please? Because I need.
What would you like?
I would like the network.
Is there only one network cable?
No, I'm on Wi-Fi.
Sorry, we're having slightly technical glitches with the network being down, and the Wi-Fi is down, and there only seems to be one single network cable. So give us 1 minute. Do you have any of the technical staff at the back to see if there's another cable? See another cable? Bill? There you go.
But I need the port. This dongle.
I don't have another network connection either. Well, the connection is extremely secure, but we're looking for a dongle. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, while he's setting it up, are you ready, Sanjay? I want to give him a little bit of time so I don't freak him out.
Yeah.
Okay, great, awesome. Demo 101, make sure you're on wired network. Okay, so what's happening here is, so I have a bunch of machines in my network, and I want to look at the state of those machines. So I'm currently looking at the Windows Defender Security Center to see what is the current state of my machines. And as you can see, I have 3 machines, and 2 of them are fine, but one of them is currently marked at a medium security risk, which means Windows Defender has detected that something is not right with that machine. There's some risk there. And if I go to Azure in the device compliance portal, I will actually see that of the 3 machines that I have, the third machine, even though it's managed, it's now considered non-compliant because something has happened on that machine. Now, Sanjan happens to be using that machine, so let's check out what happened. So what happened, Sanjan?
I don't know. I got an email which said, click on the attachment to get $1 million. I can't, we all get such emails, right?
So obviously, he shouldn't have clicked on it. Sanjan is usually a very good employee, but he clearly made a bad judgment call. And all of us do that every once in a while. So it's a managed device, but this will happen. This is a real scenario for all of us. So now the interesting thing is that Windows Defender Advanced Threat Protection figured out that that machine was actually infected. The moment it figured out the machine is infected, that's what I was seeing in my portal here. It actually informs Azure, which is figuring out whether my devices are compliant or not, and Azure has now decided that the device is not compliant. And the moment the device is not compliant, let's see what happens when we try to access some top secret content. So remember, we're talking about sensitive content here. So now I'm going to ask Sanjan to show you his experience accessing that content from a managed device that is compliant and from a managed device that is non-compliant.
Sure. Okay, so I'm now, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, back. So I'm now on a managed device. Okay, and this is my device, which is good I didn't download any malware or any such attachment on this device. And as you can see, this is the site that Navjot marked as top secret. This is my patent, the sales compete collateral site. I'm able to browse this site. I'm able to open the site, no problem. Okay. Now I'm going to switch, I'm going to remote into my other machine. Okay. This is logged in as the same user, Emily. Okay. I can browse to my home page or the SharePoint home. I'm going to browse to sales compete collateral. Okay, marked as top secret, and as soon as the page loads, I don't have permission. So this is the machine where I downloaded that infected file, and this actually marked my machine as non-compliant. So as a user, I get both the experience side by side.
Yeah, so the idea here is that even though the device is completely managed, it can get infected, and the moment it gets infected, there's an integration between Windows Defender ATP and SharePoint and OneDrive to understand that if the device is not compliant, we're actually not going to give access to it. So you as admin, when you're creating those labels, you can actually specify that. And all of this is happening because the top secret site said, do not allow access from an unmanaged device. And that unmanaged in reality means a non-compliant device. So that's what's happening. Even though this is a managed device, it's no longer compliant, doesn't meet our policies, you don't have access to it. And this is all automatic, you don't have to do anything at all. Now the next scenario I want to talk about, I should not bend. Okay. So the next thing I want to show you is the scenario we were talking about where let's say your user is sharing a folder with somebody and somebody uploads a file that is infected and has malware in it. So how do we protect you in that case? So what happens is somehow, whatever may be the way, if a file makes it to SharePoint or OneDrive, advanced threat protection is running in the background. It'll detect that the file has malware automatically. The moment it detects that a file has malware, it gets labeled. So as you can see, here I'm looking at my OneDrive, and I have some files that have these big red crosses around them. And if I try to open them, I get a message which says this file is compromised by malware. And to protect you, your PC and other files, we have removed open, share, and other commands. And in fact, when I select the file, you will notice that all the commands are gone. The only action I can take with this file is delete it. So the system automatically detected that malware made it into your SharePoint or OneDrive, figured it out, and has quarantined it. And the idea is we want to make sure that the user doesn't accidentally click on it, open it, infect their devices, or worse, spread it to other people who do the same thing, and next thing you know, everybody's infected with malware. And again, the system just took care of this for you. You don't have to do anything. Pretty cool, right? So the next thing I want to talk about, so we just covered how you can protect your sensitive information automatically using labels. We talked about malware. So now let's talk about ransomware. So how many of you here are worried about ransomware? Either you've experienced it or you think your organization may get hit by ransomware one day. It is pretty scary. It's become quite a big threat in the last few years, and it's caused a lot of damage. And we want to make sure that we are doing everything to protect your data in SharePoint and OneDrive in the event that something gets hit by ransomware. So we've had the file restore feature that was previously only available in OneDrive. It's now available in SharePoint as well. So for any document library, now you have a file restore page that you can go to, and you can roll back your OneDrive or your document library to any point in time in the last 30 days. This is pretty helpful in ransomware type of scenarios. It's also helpful if somebody accidentally does mass deletion or mass renames or those kind of things. You just roll back the changes. And in case of OneDrive, we actually go a step further because it's also integrated with Windows Defenders on Windows 10. So if you're infected by ransomware, Windows Defender and OneDrive together, they'll detect the ransomware, they will remediate the ransomware, and they'll help you recover from ransomware as well. So let me show you what this looks like. Okay, so here I am in my OneDrive. I'm looking at a folder. You can see I have a bunch of files here. Now let's say Sanjay is not the only employee in the organization that makes bad judgment calls. So I do it once in a while too, and I accidentally click on something that I shouldn't have. Windows informs me, I ignore it. Very bad of me. And obviously, really, really terrible things happen. You notice all my files got renamed to .wannacry. And the moment that happens, Windows Defender actually detects that my machine got hit by ransomware. Windows Defender is now going to go and try to find the threat, remediate it. It's actually going to look for the ransomware. It's going to delete the ransomware. And once it's deleted and cleaned up the machine, it is going to help me recover using OneDrive. Now, this takes a little bit of time, obviously. And the other thing is you want to make sure that you have actually cleaned up the machine and the ransomware is gone before you try to actually recover from OneDrive. Because even after you recover the data, it's just going to get infected again. So you first want to make sure that the machine is clean before you try to recover. And if you notice, OneDrive's already figured out that something is wrong. There's a little X on OneDrive right here. So it knows that something is wrong. Signs of ransomware have been detected. I'm waiting for a little notification that pops up from ransomware. It takes a few seconds. All of this is asynchronous. And there's a pop-up that comes to tell you that there's ransomware, and it is going to try and help me recover this. Let's give it a few seconds. Every demo has a little suspense. Now is the moment of suspense.
Well, that's exciting.
Okay, that is very exciting. Yes. Let's see what's happening here. Okay. Even if Windows Defender doesn't give you a notification or you miss it. So let's assume it gave a notification and I missed it. Even if that happens, you can go to OneDrive and you can click on the Restore button. This is going to take me to my OneDrive automatically. And it is actually going to figure out what is the right timestamp to roll back my OneDrive to. So assume that Windows Defender sent the notification. If you missed it, you can always go back here. And now OneDrive has already figured out the right timestamp to roll back my OneDrive to. All I have to do as a user is hit on Restore. I confirm. And that's it. It's basically going to now roll back my entire OneDrive to the point in time before I was hit by ransomware. Now, this process is slightly asynchronous. It can take about 30 seconds for it to kick off, but once it kicks off, it's very quick. It'll roll back my whole OneDrive, and then all the files will sync back down to the device, and I'll be in good state again. So let's give it a few seconds, and you'll notice that at the bottom right now, it has this cross. OneDrive will actually start syncing the moment those changes come back. Now, it can take a few minutes because it is rolling back my whole OneDrive. And if you don't see the notification or if you don't know what the timestamp is, you can always go back to the file restore page on your own, look at all the changes that happen, find the time when the changes started, and you click on the timestamp and you figure out all the changes before that roll back. So not that difficult, but it's obviously much easier when you don't have to do anything and just let the system take care of it for you. So you don't have to find the timestamp on your own. So in this case, notice that this UX takes a little while, but notice that the files have already started coming back. So my OneDrive is already recovering, and I didn't have to do anything. I clicked on OneDrive once, I clicked on Restore once, and done. In 3 clicks, all my files are back. Pretty cool, right? So I'm going to go and tell OneDrive I'm all good, my files are OK, and we're in a happy state. Now, the next thing I want to show you is the same capability available to you in team sites. So this is a SharePoint site, and it so happens that my coworker, Sesha, got hit by ransomware. So another person in our organization who made a bad decision. Seems to be happening a lot. And he just called me and said, hey, looks like my machine got hit by ransomware. All my files got renamed to .WannaCry, and they've all been renamed in the team site in which we're collaborating. You're the site admin. Can you help me? So I go to the site, and I notice, yeah, sure enough, all the files have been renamed to .WannaCry by Sesha. You can see. And I can now go to the file restore page for the document library. In this particular case, I have to find the right timestamp when the changes started, but it's not so hard. There's a little histogram here to help you figure out how many changes are happening, so I can actually figure out when a lot of changes happen. I click on the right timestamp, and I hit restore. And same thing, I confirm, and now my document library is going to roll back. It's exact same thing available both in SharePoint and OneDrive. So now we've just talked about how to automatically protect your sensitive information, how we protect you against malware and ransomware. Finally, let's talk about a very important topic that really worries a lot of admins, how to limit oversharing of data in your organization. So first, as a tenant admin, you can actually control what level of sharing you allow in your entire tenant by using these simple sliders that I show in the slide there, but they're available to you in the SharePoint admin experience and the OneDrive admin experience. You can use these sliders to control the level of sharing you will allow in the organization. You can also control the kind of link that is generated when a user shares something with somebody. So the default type of link that is generated, so that you can make sure the users don't accidentally generate links that are over-permissive. And now, earlier you could do this only at tenant level, but now you as an admin can set these things at per site level. So that's a big change. You can also expire access for external users. So the idea here is you as an admin set a policy which says external users are only allowed access for 20 days. After 20 days, the external user's access will automatically expire. A site owner has to go and explicitly extend somebody's access if they think they should still have access. And the idea here is that we don't want that accidentally some of your data is available to external users indefinitely. So in this case, there is a time bound. It'll automatically, the access stops. And if the site owner still thinks there is need, they can extend it. So that way, somebody's thinking about it every few, whatever time interval you have set, and confirming that, yes, I'm revalidating and saying you definitely need access. We're also making external sharing really easy, but at the same time, we're also making it really secure. You as a user, when you share a link with somebody, you can now set a password on that sharing link so that only the people you actually want to have access, somebody you share that link with and explicitly tell the password to, can open that document. You can set expiration on sharing links so that their access is time-bound. And if you want, you can block the recipient from downloading the content. So let me show you what this looks like. Sanjan, can you help me out?
Again, emails.
OK, so here I am in my OneDrive. And I've selected a document. It's a contractor's legal information. And I want to share it with somebody who's an external user. He's my contractor. And I want to make sure that he can see the document, but I only want him to be able to see it for some time because the contract is only valid for some time. And I want to make sure that he cannot make any changes, and nor can he download it. So I'm going to hit share. I'm going to give the name of the contractor. Sanjayan happens to work for our company, but is also a contractor. So I'm going to send it to his private email address at outlook.com. But I want to make sure that he cannot edit this document. I don't want him to be able to download this document, and I'm going to set a password. Yes, pretty cool, right? And I hit apply and send. So now let's see what the recipient's experience looks like. Oh, I'm trying to stay away from your mic.
OK, so this is my, my Outlook inbox. I got an email from Emily. She shared a document with me. So I'm going to go ahead and click open. And one moment. This is not the right browser.
We are doing this live, as you can tell. It's working code. We're not faking it.
Yes. When it fails, it is always live.
Yes.
I can't wait to see what's in the document that Emily sent you.
A different one. So she's just sending me one more. OK. Cool. Let me refresh. Give it a moment. Oh, I already had that. I did too fast. So, OK, company goals. Great. Go ahead and click. OK. prompting me for a password. So this is a link that is sent to anyone. I'm going
The idea here is he's only able to open it because he has that password. So if somebody else receives that link, they will not be able to open it. And he can open it because he knows the password, which I have shared with him some other way, which probably called him or something because I trust him, so only he has the password.
Okay, couple of things. Document opens fine. I do not see any of the regular menu bar that I see, and it says that this document do not have permission to download because she sent me a link which prevents me from downloading. Okay, so I cannot download this document. There's no option to download. I cannot print this document. Moreover, if I try to click and do Control-C or try to select, it doesn't let me select. So there is no, I'm right-clicking right now. There is no option to do a copy also. So of course, you can take a picture from your phone if you want to, but you cannot download, you cannot copy. It's completely secured.
And Sanjan, what happens if you try to access this document? What if I said it expires after this week and you try to access the same document 2 weeks from now? What happens?
Oh, good point. So let's see, this is a document Emily shared with me some time back. So if I try to open this document, and the link has expired because she has set an expiration, and when the work is done, the link will expire. I will not have access to the document anymore. So it's time sensitive.
Yes, so the idea here is that now, as you can see, only Sanjay can open the document because I only shared it with him. There is a time and he cannot download it, and after some time his access expires. So pretty cool and secure way of sharing with external people without having a high bar of admin having to manage all of them, adding them to the organization. I keep losing the clicker. Okay. So we just, give me 1 second, we've moved on. And in addition to all of these controls for managing external sharing and giving your users extra power when they share something, we also heard a lot of feedback from everybody that they want more visibility into how sharing is happening in the organization. So I'm happy to say that you will now be able to generate extensive sharing reports to tell you exactly what is shared, which files are shared, with whom, using what kind of links. You can, as a site owner for a document library or for OneDrive, you can just go generate a CSV file, and right from there, you can open it up in Power BI, and you can create beautiful visualizations to understand what kind of sharing is going on so you can stay in control of it. So that's another new feature that's coming really soon. So just to recap, we've just shown you that we have an inherently secure, reliable, highly available platform on which you have a lot of security controls that you can apply to in addition to what we provide you by default in the platform, to actually customize the security to meet the needs of your organization. And on top of that, we automatically protect you against things like ransomware and malware. So I really hope that you feel like SharePoint and OneDrive is the safest place for your data. And now I'm going to hand it off to Bill to talk about compliance.
There we go. So, compliance controls. So the security stuff is great. Obviously, Sanjoyan and Navjot still need to do some work because they have a bunch of infected machines that they left up here for me, but we'll be okay to move through the compliance section. So if complexity is the enemy of security, then simplicity is the enemy of compliance. So compliance is complex unto itself, but it's driven through simplicity. So we saw a bunch of demonstrations regarding malware. As Navjot said, 98% of it's polymorphic. More and more people don't know how to secure and protect their devices. And we've built in intelligence to help you do that. But we also want to help you be compliant. So that takes us to one of those inner layers of the unique approach diagram you saw earlier. If you think about how much data is being created, as I mentioned earlier, there's predictions that by 2020, we're going to have 44 zettabytes of data that's being created and managed globally. And some say by 2025, that's going to grow to over 120 zettabytes of data. But if you think about what that means, since our Ignite in Atlanta, how many of you went to Ignite in Atlanta before we had it in Orlando? So a good percentage of you went to Ignite in Orlando. Think about it, 90% of the world's data has been created since that point, just 2 years ago. Most people have computers and phones older than that. Data is growing at an exponential rate. And that's where the complexity comes from a compliance perspective. As I mentioned, $600 billion is lost to cybercrime each and every year. It's estimated that 6 trillion will be by 2021. And again, there's a huge shortage. 1.87 million people will find to be short from a cybersecurity perspective. And then obviously GDPR. GDPR should be a huge concern just because of the first 4 words here, 4% of worldwide revenue. That's nothing to shake a stick at if you're any organization, regardless of how small or how large. And in fact, only about a quarter of organizations can explicitly state at this point in time, I am absolutely 100% GDPR compliant. Being compliant with GDPR, being compliant with AB 875, it's hard, it's complex. And we have a number of tools to help you get there. One, from a compliance perspective, we stay on top of compliance every single day with over 1,000 controls in our compliance framework to help you stay ahead. We have compliance leaderships across ISO 27001, FISMA, and the EU model clauses. We can help you meet data residency obligations or data sovereignty obligations with OneDrive and SharePoint multi-geo scenarios. We also have new GDPR tools, despite how I've spelled it up here, it's actually GDPR and not GRDP. That's a new one. It's coming out in May of 2019. But GDPR controls, we have a number of new GDPR controls to help you remain compliant. And many of those controls are going to be applicable to some of the privacy regulations we see enacted here in the continental US. We're seeing more and more states start to address privacy. We've seen more and more organizations have to testify in front of Congress here in the US. Many of those organizations are social media organizations. I won't mention any names, but more organizations are being required to testify in front of Congress on how they're handling individuals' data. And a lot of that is coming from what we've learned from Cambridge Analytica, what we've learned from social engineering. We're seeing more and more attempts to get at an individual's data, and we're seeing more and more organizations who want that data. We've seen examples in our nation's capital and other places where people will leave USB keys laying around for people to pick up and put in their machine out of curiosity. Humans are curious by nature and they want to see what's on it. So they plug it in, and the next thing you know, they're infected. And that infection spreads and spreads and spreads, and compliance is a big piece of security. We also help you with intelligent e-discovery, so intelligence is a huge investment for us, as well as risk assessments using tools like service assurance in our service. So we're going to head and take a look at a couple of demos, some of which you may have seen before we move into some demos that you may have not. It's not you, it's this. Wow, it's when you touch it. It's almost like it shocks you too. It's wild. So here you can see our new SharePoint Admin Center that we've been working diligently on over the course of the past several months. Obviously, we have the classic SharePoint Admin Center 2, and you can flip over to the new SharePoint Admin Center. But we're not here to talk about the Admin Center. One of the things we want to look at is a little option down here called geolocations. So for organizations that need to meet data residency or sovereignty requirements across the world, one of the big investments that we made was in multi-geo capabilities with Office 365, particularly with OneDrive and SharePoint. So as you can see here at the top of the screen right now, what I'm looking at is North America. So as you can see from a analytics perspective or insights perspective, I'm looking at file activity by type, I'm looking at total and active sites, and I'm looking at data that's being derived from my North American geo. And very easily I can come in here and say, look at United Kingdom. So I can just flip that over to United Kingdom, and then I can look at trends and insights from United Kingdom as well. So I can start to look at some of those insights from the United Kingdom. But if I come down to the bottom and I click on the little geolocations tab, I can have a look over here from an admin experience perspective. And as you can see all of my geos right here on the screen. So I've got Canada, I've got North America, I've got the United Kingdom, where I'm at right now. So as you can see, that's highlighted. Europe, Middle East, and Africa, Asia, Pacific, and Australia. If I needed to add a location, I can come over here and choose add a location, and maybe I want to add France, or I want to add Japan, or I want to add Korea because my business is growing. I can flip between these, and so right now I'm looking at storage for Great Britain or the United Kingdom. So as you can see, when I clicked on the map, it flipped me over to Canada. So that's kind of the admin experience. So basically what I can do now is from a Canada perspective, I can look at the active sites, and I can see all of my active sites in Canada, to which I have one. We're not using a lot of SharePoint there, unfortunately. Or I can flip over and I can look at North America, my primary geo, and I can come in and start looking at the active sites there, where I have more sites available to me. So just to flip gears real quick, we can look at some of the end user experience. So multi-geo capabilities are not just an administrative control, it's also very powerful from an end user perspective. So one of the first things that we did as we started to modernize SharePoint is we introduced the new SharePoint Home, effectively replacing the little tile that you used to click on called Sites with a more intelligent service through the SharePoint Home. So as you can see here in the SharePoint Home now, I have activity across sites both in the US as well as in Europe. So as you can see, I'm getting an aggregate view of activity that's transpired against sites as well as intelligent recommendations via the graph inside of the SharePoint Home. So I've got a number of different frequent sites here. I've got one in the US as well as one in Europe. So effectively, I can rationalize and aggregate all of this information across all the sites that I have a relationship with in the SharePoint Home, regardless of the geography that those sites have been provisioned in. So just to switch gears one more time, we'll flip over. And as you can see here, I have my solar energy hub site. So this is a really powerful capability because one of the things that we had announced several months ago is the ability to search across geos, which is a powerful capability because it helps you discover information yet remain compliant with your data residency and data sovereignty requirements that your organization may need to adhere to. So as you can see here, I have a hub site, and I can actually associate sites from across different geos with a hub site that can be homed in a specific geo itself. So I can create a hub site in a geo such as the US, Solar Energy US, but I can associate sites from different geos with that hub site. So then I get the news roll-up capabilities that these hub sites bring, as well as the consistent navigation. So I can create a nice consistent experience, but yet roll up data across multiple different sites. I can come in and search across those. So as you can see from a search perspective, I can actually see my associated sites. So when I click into there, I can see I've got solar panel symposium, solar energy accessories, and I can see news and files on my associated sites as well. So it's very easy to be able to come in, perform a search for something like Contoso, and then get results from across all of my various associated sites, regardless of the geo they may reside in. So as you can see, Contoso purchasing permissions down towards the bottom. It's on the Solar Gadgets European team, and it was modified by Melissa Jones, as you can see in parens, Europe. So Melissa Jones is in Europe, and she's working against that site, whereas Sesha Mani, above on Group International Product Launch, is actually in the US and working on a document there. But the hub sites allowed me to associate all these sites in a very unique and compelling way to be able to engage with my audience, yet remain compliant with my data residency concerns. So a really powerful capability, and we're also announcing this week, and Sesha, our lead engineer on that, is here today, that we're making generally available SharePoint multi-geo capabilities now as well, because they've been in a preview state. Yes? Q1. Q1. I'm sure they hit a bug. So GDPR. So many of you have probably seen the Admin Center or some of the work that's being done on the Admin Center over the course of the past week so far. So as you can see from the Compliance Center today, one of the first things I get right up here at the top is classify and retain GDPR info. The beauty part is from an intelligence perspective. So one of the big points that I made earlier in the conversation is one of our big investments is in intelligence. If 90% of the world's data has been created in the last 2 years alone, and there's going to be 44 trillion gigabytes of data within the next 2 years, that's a lot of information for you as a human to try to rationalize and to try to protect and to try to understand what your users are doing with it. So one of the ways that we make it really easy is through intelligence, through artificial intelligence, through machine learning, and making our solutions smart and making them intuitive. So as you can see here, classify and retain GDPR data gives me a top 5 list. So from a top 5 perspective, top 5 unprotected sensitive information types related to GDPR. As you can see, one of my sensitive information types is EU data credit card or EU debit card number, 5100 unprotected. I can actually go in and I can start to look at recommendations. So from a recommendations perspective, it's telling me that, hey, you know what, we're going to help you fix this. You've got a number of unprotected documents, and you have a number of sensitive information types that you should be using, but those documents aren't protected now. So what I can do is right here, I can actually allow it to create a label for me, and the label is going to say, this label will do these things. It's automatically going to be applied to items in SharePoint and OneDrive that contain sensitive information types related to GDPR. It's also going to be available for users to apply to other items as needed, and then it's also going to say, retain labeled items for 5 years based on item creation date and then trigger disposition review. So who can apply this label? I can say everyone in my org, or I can say specific users, and I can simply publish and apply that label. So using the intelligence in the service, I didn't have to go out and say, okay, what kind of label do I need to create? What kind of settings should I associate with that particular label? Where are the documents that should be protected from a GDPR perspective? The system's intelligent, and it can help me make those decisions. So I can simply come in and just use these intuitive controls to be able to perform those actions. And then in some cases, if you're like Emily, who has persistent problems with her machine, whether that's malware or wanting to share externally, in all cases, that's the same type of person that wants to request that their data be deleted. So Emily's embarrassed now because she's had all kinds of problems with her machine, so she knows she's protected by GDPR and says, let me get my data deleted. So now you can just go to cases, you can go to your data subject requests. Very easily, you can just pop right in and create one. So in the interest of time, we're not going to create a case because we want to show you some other cool stuff. So we're going to switch back to slides, trying to hopefully not scream in your ear again. All right, so we saw some multi-geo capabilities with SharePoint and OneDrive. Now let's go ahead and shift gears and move on, maybe. PowerPoint just died on me. Don't leave, we're not done. We're just restarting PowerPoint. We didn't quit yet. It'd probably be better if you guys didn't leave your infected machines up here because PowerPoint was doing just fine. All right, let's see where we were. So we just looked at multi-geo capabilities, and with any luck, we can talk about proactive compliance. So some of the things that we are introducing to the service is, one, we're helping you with the automatic application of retention labels, and we're going to take a look at that as well here in a moment because it's a powerful capability to really streamline the actions that you need to take from a governance perspective. So very similar to how we can leverage intelligence to help you make the right decisions about your data, how to classify and protect your data, we can also make it really easy from a retention perspective through automatic application of retention policies. We're also enabling you to create regulatory records. So if you think about a regulatory record versus a record, the regulatory record is the immutable one. And we're also enabling you to create those, which is going to be really cool. And then we want to also leverage insights. So insights are a big part of what we do from a service perspective. So we have a dashboard to be able to help you do that. So I'm going to go ahead and shift into demo real quick. We're going to have to speed it up a little bit in the interest of time. So I'm just going to come in here, and we're going to take a look at the Compliance Center. Oh, sorry, I got to switch. Almost afraid to touch this machine down here. All right, so here we are again in the Compliance Center. Let's just go ahead and pop up here, click on Classification, and have a quick look at our labels. So clicking on labels, you're going to see that we have a number of different labels available to us. So we have a number of different labels that are available to us inside of the Compliance Center, both sensitivity and retention labels. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about is this concept of retention labels. So as you can see here in the retention labels, Down here towards the bottom, we have one called tax contracts. One of the really cool things that we want to talk to you about today is not only the automatic application of retention labels, but the association of retention labels and how many of you use content types in SharePoint. So content types have been around for the majority of SharePoint's history. Most people are familiar with content types when we introduced them on premises, when we started really doubling down on enterprise content management capabilities in our 2007 release. So content types have become something that people like to use in order to classify their content inside of SharePoint. But content types don't really provide enough power or capability to classify your content. Effectively, they enable you to create a word, and that word means something to your users. And it means something because you have a policy somewhere that says it means something. You have a definition of what HBI, LBI, and MBI are, maybe, for example, or top secret, confidential, in general. You generally have a definition of what those terms mean. You create a content type, and you just hope that your users understand what those mean. So in this particular case, we have a thing called tax contracts. So let's just go ahead and navigate to a site real quick. So we're just going to move over to one of our demo sites. I'm actually going to hit a URL, and then I'm going to change sites real quick. So we're going to navigate to one of our sites. So as you can see, just make sure that loads. So what you saw inside of retention labels is we had a retention label called tax contracts. So if I come in here real quick into my solar panels V3 site and I click on documents, and we give that a moment to spin up and load as the wireless cooperates, you're going to see that we have it right here. So we have the automatic application of a retention label within this document library based on that particular content type. So as you can see, we have a retention view, and over here you can see these documents have been labeled with tax contracts because they are inheriting from that content type. And then I can come in, I can click on a document, and I can look at its information as traditional with SharePoint. But if you notice right here, the document has a little lock on it because it's inheriting from that tax contracts label. So from a labeling perspective, I can create a label, I can specify a retention period, I can classify something as a record or a regulatory record, and then I can have that associated with the content type. Or conversely, I can work in the opposite direction, and I can take my existing content types and I can import them with a few simple configurations inside of the Security and Compliance Center and create labels from my existing content types. So now content types even become more powerful because of their relationship with labels. So for those of you that are already using it, there's opportunities in both directions, whether you're just getting started leveraging content types and labels, or whether you're already using content types and you want to start investing more in the creation of labels. So effectively, the association between retention labels and content types is a super powerful capability that we're bringing to the service as well. So let's go ahead and try to get back to slides real quick as we start to power through this. The other thing too is we really, from an insights perspective, we give you a number of different things. From day one, full audit tracking. So if you think about from a platform security perspective, how we protect your documents from day one, you get full audit tracking from day one as well. We also give you actionable insights via the SharePoint Admin Center. So you saw the homepage of the SharePoint Admin Center, and you get insights in both how your users are using your environment. You see growth in sites, you can see trends in external sharing and trends in documents being accessed and created. So we got a number of different trends that you can use from a correlation perspective to figure out how people are using the environment, but that could also help you from a compliance perspective as well. And then the other thing that we want to do is using tools like SecureScore, we can help you reduce risk inside of the service. We're going to do another quick demo. We probably won't look at SecureScore in the interest of time. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and switch back over to demo real quick. We're going to go back to the Compliance Center real fast. So through the Compliance Center, one of the things that we looked at was we looked at that tax contract label. We looked at the GDPR scenarios, and then we also looked how we could take that tax contract retention label and associate it with the content type. But one of the other things that we can do as well is from a label perspective, you want to know what's happening. So we also are introducing what we call label analytics, or you could say label insights, because insights is a big portion of our investments. So as you can see, I have 320,000 labeled items. I can see that almost half of those are retention labels, a good percentage are sensitivity labels, and then there's a combination of both there at the very end. I can also look by location. I can see those that are in SharePoint Exchange, as well as other software as a service applications as well. Coming in here, I can see how my labels are being used. So as you can see, financial is the most used retention label, and I can also see the number of applications from a financial perspective. I can also see GDPR, and I can see it's also a retention label and the frequency of its use. I can come in and I can look at more, so I can actually see the number of labeled items. I can see them across SharePoint and Exchange, items that were recently labeled, how many were auto-applied versus how many were manual applied, and then I can actually come down and look at what those labels are. Coming back to label analytics, I can also see the most used sensitivity labels. So these were the ones that Navjot was creating. So I have my general and I have my confidential, and you can also drill into that, and you can start looking at that data as well. So we're giving you really powerful analytics to really understand how labels are being used in your organization and by whom. So as you can see, Brady Edelman, as the compliance officer in my organization, is my personal hero. I absolutely love Brady because Brady's out there being proactive, assigning labels to stuff, hopefully the right ones. And then we have Kendrick in a close second, and we have Leslie as well. And I can look at this and I can explore some of that label activity as well. So I can go in and I can slice and dice this data and get a greater understanding of how information is being used in my organization. So I'm not going to spend too much time on that because we would like to do a little bit of Q&A. Back to the slides. So how do you get started with all these awesome capabilities? It's pretty simple to be able to get there. SharePoint Migration Tool, aka.ms/SPMT. This week, we've got a number of new capabilities coming to the SharePoint Migration Tool. We're going to make generally available the Windows PowerShell commandlets that we shipped as preview recently, so you can automate your migrations, take a little bit of time off, and just let the thing run in the background. We're also going to refresh the user experience for the SharePoint Migration Tool. And then one of the last things that we're going to do is we're also going to support full site migrations for SharePoint 2013 sites. So, right. Oh. Well, everybody has probably been waiting for that one. So not just lists, not just libraries, but now you can just point it at a site and get your site migrated. So looking at roadmap, based on some of the stuff we talked about today, really fast, I'll just leave this slide up for just a second for you to take pictures of, and what we can actually do is we can do Q&A as we let you take some pictures of the roadmap slides. So with that said, let's just go ahead and get started. Anybody have any questions? Right here?
Hi.
Hi.
Great presentation. I was wondering, the sensitivity labels for groups and sites, that used to be like just a label, right? So it's being replaced with this?
My mic is not, oh, great. Yes, so the labels before was just, it didn't have any policies associated with it. So this is the evolution of that. Those are getting grandfathered in as well, so you can actually go back and associate policies with it, but this is how we're actually evolving those to tie policies directly with them. Same labels everywhere.
Hi there. For the labels for the non-compliant machine, is there an administrator who gets a warning that this is why that person is not given permission because the...
Yes. So actually what we just showed you was in the UX where you go and you can tell that the machine is not compliant or there's something, you can click on details and it'll tell you what's wrong with the machine and what the risks are. And the user actually will get an information also about why they're not. So currently we're working on it. The page is going to be much more informative, telling you that the reason you're not able to access it because your device is not compliant, or we have discovered that it's at risk, so you need to go take some action and go here to do something about it. Yeah. Perfect. Oh, sorry, yes. If you would like to take, I'm really bad at this, I apologize. And I missed the first gentleman on this side. If they're still here, they can take their cup. If not, I'll give it to the next person. Yes, ma'am.
Hi. I would like to ask if we can apply labels to more than one site at the same time. Let's say we have 150 site collections.
Yes.
Is it like easy way with PowerShell or?
So yes, you can. You can use PowerShell to apply labels. Yeah. And so that's one of the fastest ways of doing it. We are looking at in the future, just like we did with retention labels, to do automatic application of labels as well.
And they work on classic sites too?
They work on all kinds of sites, correct? Correct me if I'm wrong, guys. They work on classic sites as well.
If we have subsites also, it
Yes.
will work?
Yes.
Awesome, thank you.
Yes.
The conditional access and the classification features,
Yeah.
can those be scoped or for just a part of the organization? We don't have licensing for 10,000 employees, but we have a very sensitive group of users. Can we take advantage for a few site collections for those users only?
So you can actually, labels can be, you publish labels to you can publish labels to either everybody, or you can publish labels to specific users alone. So when you create a label, you get to decide who to publish it to. So you can make it available only to a certain population and decide that only those people get to see them and use them. And you can apply labels per site. So you can classify per site. So you can, that's available as well.
And conditional access as well?
Conditional access is part of, it's not tied to user, correct.
So the whole organization needs to?
Correct, exactly. It's not per user.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. Would you like a cup? These are really cool SharePoint OneDrive cups. And I'm sorry they're leaking a little bit of blue color. Yes.
You've got sensitivity labels and you got retention labels, but I'm noticing that you can only apply one label, or at least through the demos, you can only apply one label. Is there going to be a future
You can apply both, even today. You can apply both a retention label and a sensitivity label. You can have both.
And on top of that, does this work with flow, where we can assign a label through a flow?
Sure, absolutely. Oh, sorry.
Go on site.
We're being told we have to evacuate the room. We will be standing right at the doors, and you guys can come and ask us questions. We'll be here till we answer each and every one of you.